We are ready.
Welcome to the Monday, February 22nd, 2021 policy meetings. Gary, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. So these are what was rescheduled from last Tuesday, which is why we're meeting today. First up is review of legislative funding request materials for the Sunrise Gateway Corridor Community Visioning Concept. We have Trent Wilson from Public and Government Affairs in the room and Jamie Stasny from Transportation and Development on Zoom to present. Who will begin? Trent?
I can begin.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, Chair Smith, Commissioners, thanks for your time today. I'm Trent Wilson with Public and Government Affairs, joined by Jamie Stasny with the Department of Transportation and Development. Happy to be here today. We're here today with an update on the progress of a legislative priority that this board approved at January 12 for your legislative agenda. That policy is to support funding to establish a vision plan for the Sunrise Gateway Corridor that addresses mobility, livability, industrial, employment, and housing needs. This is kind of a pivot from what we've done in the past, which was to seek funding for a transportation project specifically. This is a vision plan for the whole area. So you have received materials in your packet today with a draft brochure that our staff team has developed in cooperation with several of our external partners, including the City of Happy Valley and Metro, who would be partnering with us on this work. And this proposal that we're putting forward is a $4 million request to the legislature, and that would lead to about 2 years of work if this were funded. The reason we're moving in this direction is because the transportation measure that Metro produced in last year failed in November, and some of this work was included in that effort. However, this work is still necessary if we want to move forward our Sunrise projects, which is to go and do the community engagement work that's really essential here. So that's what we're pivoting towards, is to make sure that that still moves forward. So we're here today to confirm with the board this new approach that we've outlined in your packet so that we can incorporate any changes into the draft that you see fit. And Jamie's going to walk through those elements within the document and make sure that you understand how we got there and why our stakeholders feel some of those are important. And when Jamie is finished, I'll walk through the next steps with the legislature. Thank you. Jamie?
Thanks, Trent, and good afternoon. Good to see you all. Here to give you a run through of the materials that were already in your packet. We have a back and front brochure that we have shared with you. As you all know, the Sunrise Corridor is home to one of the state's busiest and most critical freight distribution centers, while also being a place where many people live, work, and pass through to get to the Mount Hood National Forest. The challenge that we have in this area with this project, which is one of your highest priorities for transportation, is that the last community engagement that we conducted was over 10 years ago, and it was solely focused on the road. We did a lot of project development work through the Metro funding measure, which failed, but that work led us to understand that no local community engagement had really been done in 10 years, and we didn't do much of it as part of the measure either. So this community engagement effort would have been funded as part of the measure if it would have passed. Our proposal is to create an equitable development plan in partnership with the people who live and work in the area, especially people of color. Additionally, we absolutely do not want to slow down the great work that Happy Valley is doing in the area. We believe that this work can happen with Happy Valley, and they have been in close communication with us to make sure that they're in step with us and are supportive of this approach. What do we do next? What are we trying to get out of this? So this is what we're going to get with this work and for this $4 million ask. Inclusive community engagement, building trust and support for the future of this area. An economic opportunities analysis to identify the challenges and opportunities to fostering economic development and to evolve our economic development strategy to include solutions to aid in economic recovery and job creation. A community health assessment to understand health and well-being challenges for those who live, work, and rely on this corridor. Anti-displacement strategies that identify disadvantaged communities who may face displacement pressures and work with the community to create strategies to prevent displacement. An infrastructure assessment to identify the infrastructure needs, including service provision, capital projects, and detailed mobility improvements to increase safety for all, and a funding plan to operationalize and prioritize the projects identified. A land use assessment to examine the land use designation and evaluate the ideal designations to optimize opportunity for economic development and housing creation. an environmental reevaluation of proposed transportation infrastructure projects, a formal update to that environmental process that the county went through over 10 years ago. As Trent mentioned, the legislative strategy matches with the board's Performance Clackamas goal to identify funding for infrastructure needs in the Sunrise area. But please also note on the far right side of the first page of the brochure, beyond the specific infrastructure goals set by the board, we believe this visioning effort will actually advance goals in all 5 of the board's strategic focus areas. And as such, we are pleased to present this draft to you, and we look forward to your feedback. Trent, would you like to close this up?
Thank you very much. So as I mentioned, we are working with our partners to make sure that this is a group effort, because it's more than just us who benefit from this area. And happy to say that a lot of our partners are already on board and ready to support us in a variety of ways. Over the next, if we'll take your feedback today, we'll incorporate all that feedback into this document to finalize it. And then once that's done, we'll start scheduling meetings with legislators to allow them to what they need, give them what they need to go forward and support this funding request at the legislature. And then we'll start working with our stakeholders to get behind the support effort to make sure that this moves forward. As I mentioned, this is a $4 million request at the legislature, but another reason that we wanted to bring it to you today is that there is staff in-kind match to this to sort of sweeten the pot for the legislature to move forward. That in-kind match is in a draft form on your document at $500,000, but it's more than that at this point because of the type of land use work, economic development work. It just touches a variety of departments. So I think it's a pretty healthy match at this point. We're still doing a little bit of the math on it, but it does have that staff match implication for work that the county staff would be doing. So I do want to say, though, that none of that would happen, though, unless these funds are approved at the legislature, this $4 million request. So this is the way that this project moves forward at this present time, is without the legislative request, this community outreach engagement plan would have to come up with a different proposal. And that's what we have right now. So as I mentioned, we want to hear your feedback on this document, answer any questions that you have, and assuming your support or pending your support, we'll move forward to finalize this document and get our legislators active on this. Thank you.
Is there a placeholder bill already? Isn't the bill deadline passed?
The bill deadline is actually this week, but our goal on this one, because it's such a very specific request, kind of a unique funding opportunity, we're aiming for the, it's the budget bill, the end of year Christmas tree bill, where more prioritized projects, almost like earmarks, are put forward.
Christine, is there anybody on the,
I don't see any hands raised yet.
Mark, do you comment?
Yes, Chair Smith. Trent, how was the $4.5 million cost for the study derived at?
Thank you for your question. There are a lot of projects that we anticipate that would go into this, including a community engagement plan that has just not occurred yet. There's planning work that would need to occur with for land use purposes, additional transportation purposes, as well as water infrastructure that would be accommodating to increased development in Happy Valley. And so we've been working with all of our departments, especially the major infrastructure departments, to come up with this number that we think would match the amount of work that is required to do this effort.
Okay, and this is going to pay for a 2-year study that will examine the project to 172nd or all the way to Highway 26?
So it would not go all the way to Highway 26, and if you see on your packet here in the back, there's a draft out on the outline. There's a red line that sort of outlines the project area. It goes roughly from Interstate 205 to 172nd, and then it's between what I typically consider the southern part of Happy Valley down to the Clackamas River. And so making sure that this project is bigger than the road, I guess, this does include a lot of the housing that's in this area, as well as a lot of the business involvement and community economic development issues and opportunities that are in this area. So it's the whole area as that would be supported by what we've typically or historically called Phase 2 of the Sunrise Project. But because it involves those housing and business pieces, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just between 122nd to 172nd. That included that whole area, which includes some of the Phase 1 pieces. And I guess to the first part of your question, yes, what you're getting out of this is really two pieces. It's a huge community engagement effort, which would include making sure that we connect with folks who utilize this area for housing purposes, as well as our business engagement, an equitable program that prioritizes people of color who rely on this area as well. So there's a huge element of community engagement on this. And then from that, we would build phase 2 here. Well, not phase 2 of the program, but the second piece of this is moving towards a blueprint that is the full vision process here. So it's a community engagement piece, and it's a pretty substantial land use planning work that would go into it as well.
Chair Smith, I got one more question. And what is the time frame into the future that this study is going to take into consideration? Are you going to take into consideration the population in 10, 20 years? I mean, how far in the future will you factor in terms of this study?
That's a great question, and I think that's something that we can build into the scope of work as this project continues to be developed. Jamie, I'd like for you to maybe take a stab at some of this too, but a lot of this work is based on some of the housing and land use and development projections that Metro has established for not just this area, but the area that these roads and these projects would lead to, which is the development of Happy Valley. So it would be a forward-looking document at a minimum, but yes, happy to work with y'all on how far ahead that needs to be.
Okay,
Jamie, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. Yes, I'd chime in to add that the population projections, I believe, are going out to 2045. And we're also working with our state economic office to understand business projections in the area as well. So we're working in that kind of 20, 25-year timeframe for projecting out into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Savas, what do you think about this project?
Thank you. I'm supportive of the project, and I just thought I might just take a minute for not necessarily my colleagues as much as those who are going to be listening to it today and in the future, that this has been this area has, or this portion of the area has been part of a greater plan for the future of Clackamas County for over 38 years now. So Happy Valley, by its natural progression of growth, is meeting some of those needs. But if just a reminder that Metro brought in 13,000 acres about 20 years ago into the UGB, and the main road or area infrastructure, all these things that we're speaking of, that this package or this brochure, if you want to call it that, speaks to, is all the elements of need, if you will, of getting to that, to feeding that area and those future acres eventually. This is just one small area. It's still rather large, but it is the next area that really needs a lot of attention. It is unsafe to walk a lot of this, and yet we have schools, and on one side of the highway, we have neighbors and residents on both sides of the highway. We have amenities on each side, but there's no safe passage east, west, north, south. We have needs for housing. We currently have mixed income levels of housing or mixed housing. Currently, we need a lot more. It's a major crisis that we have in this area. But one thing I wanted to add a little bit, and not necessarily that I would suggest any changes per se, but staff could take those under consideration, that, and I will speak to this further tomorrow under issues, I believe. That might be the best time. And that is that coming out of the JPAC meeting on Thursday, I became aware of apparently their first phase of this emergency routes, project that's being done. And this Highway 212 is considered one of the two escape routes. If we needed to meet a major evacuation, Highway 212, 26 corridor out to Highway 97 is one of the corridors. And then the major one is I-84. Well, it should occur to a lot of us that here just about a week ago or so, I-84 was shut down, as it commonly is in the winter. And if we were to have a Cascadia event, and this was the only highway, and this is not just a highway project, I don't want to put emphasis, this is just a highway project, but I do want to say that going from a highway that is 3 lanes one way and 3 lanes the other, and necking it down to the remainder to the east being 1 lane each way, with a lot of areas having 0 shoulder and literally a culvert on each side, that that is not conducive to safety. That's not inclusive to walking, biking, transit, emergency evacuation routes, any of this. So this is just one section that needs a lot of work and a huge amount of potential. Like Trent alluded to, the metro projections for growth are significant. Then also comes with that are jobs and industry, commercial, industrial. There is a tremendous amount of opportunity. So I think it's important that we ask for this money, get this money to do the planning, and be able to shine a light on some of the major needs our region is speaking about recently. Again, homelessness, housing, jobs, business recovery. There's a lot of elements that this area can serve to help Clackamas County be successful. And with that, I'll conclude my comments.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. So it looks Happy Valley's on board. Are they on board with the financial contribution as well?
Yes, we've worked with them, and it's, again, we're still piecing together what the work exactly looks like, but they have mentioned that they are able to provide in-kind staff time match, just like we are, which we know that we will have to produce the efforts of some of our planners, our transportation planners, our economic development team, and likewise, they have a lot of this as well. And this area does include their urban renewal area, and so there is a lot of work that they already project in this area which would incorporate into this broader visioning process. So yes.
And the 500,000 in kind, or the match, is our staff time and resources that we are putting towards the effort. Is that right?
So I guess just to be candid, this document was built 2 weeks ago. We've done a lot more math since then. We're actually much closer to like $1.5 million in terms of our time and Happy Valley's time, all things together. We're close of staff time that would probably go into this over a 2-year period for all of this work.
Okay. And this is just, I am just like, it's like, wow, $4 million seems like a lot. And I'm looking at what's already been done, and part of it is compiling the studies that have already been completed. It's like, could you just shed some light on why it's $4 million to basically review, look at, I mean, it seems like so much of this has been done. So explain to me.
I'd love, Jamie, if you could help me on some of this, of course, but I think some of the work that's been done is dated, especially for major infrastructure projects. That stuff has a ticking clock on it, if you will. And there's just a lot of changes that have gone into that. So some of that work needs to be repeated. Of course, it can be refreshed. The cost of bringing a lot of folks in these days, because there is a lot of work at the infrastructure level and the engagement work that we're doing here at the county. We know some of the cost of doing these projects. It is expensive to do public work as a public agency. And so initially, these are estimates that get us towards making sure that we can do the work if we get the money. And it's possible, too, that the legislature could negotiate us down, depending on what they have available. And so we wanted to make sure that we picked a number that met the need of the work and also allowed us to say, if it goes down, this is what we are not able to do with the money that you do give us. It might still allow us to move the project forward, but we took all those into consideration when we came up with this number. Jamie, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add this equitable community engagement program that we're looking at undertaking is substantial. There are a lot of different groups in the area that have not been engaged in this conversation in the past, so they weren't part of that past work, or maybe they didn't live in the community at that time. And there's a lot of groups that are already organized that we're not talking to. So that piece of the work is going to be very substantial, and we're approaching it in a new way that we haven't necessarily done other projects. So it will be a huge part of the dollar amount. The other thing that's really big that isn't normally part of a transportation study is this opportunities analysis for the economic status in the area, an EOA. That is going to be a big undertaking as well for our BCS team, and that will be substantial cost as well. To look at the evolving kind of landscape of the economy in COVID, things are changing, and we're trying to understand all of that and prepare our land use and our businesses to be successful in the future. So that's a really important piece that's pretty large. And then the community health assessment as well is something we haven't done out there, looking at air quality, looking at all of these different pieces that could affect the health and well-being of the people that live in and walk and work in that area. That's something we haven't done either. So there are a lot of different pieces. And then the more traditional pieces like the infrastructure assessment, just looking at with these land use changes that we might undertake, what additional infrastructure would be needed, not just a road or transportation network, but looking at service provision for these potential new housing units or for these other business opportunities. It's a huge undertaking that, and this area is complicated. There's a lot of different providers. So there'll be a lot of
Thank you,
collaborative
Jamie.
work that needs to happen with them. Thank you.
Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader both have their hands up.
Commissioner Schrader?
Commissioner Schrader, you're on mute.
I'm looking at all the studies that we've had done in this area. And since I've been here since close to 2003, I loved your answer. It was right after. They're old studies. We have to review things. I had a question about the Rock Creek Employment Area Plan. So when has that been updated? And I'm assuming that Providence still owns the property there. Am I correct?
Yes to your Providence question. I'll need Jamie's help on the Rock Creek question.
That Rock Creek Industrial Plan is fairly new. That was finalized, I believe, just a few years ago. So we'll be incorporating the findings of that study into our analysis that we're doing and refreshing some of it. But I believe it was just a few years ago that they wrapped that up.
Okay, can you get a copy to me of that? That'd be great. Just an electronic, that'd be fantastic.
Is that it, Martha?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's it.
Trent, I have a couple questions for you. Is the $4 million ask in conflict with any of the I-205 funding to finish that project?
I don't believe so, but also it's uncertain. So again, we're aiming for what's called the Christmas tree bill, which is usually funds that the legislature has that comes out of lottery bond
I'm
funding.
very familiar with the Christmas tree
That's
bill,
right.
and it's probably certainly not the best strategy that I would like to see this commission engage in whatsoever. Due diligence is not performed. We don't have time to talk to our federal legislators and explain to them why we've been lobbying so hard to get 3 lanes in I-205. Now, all of a sudden, we want funding for $4 million for this other transportation project. I believe it's sending mixed messages to the legislature, and it's confusing. I would be confused. I sat on Ways and Means in the legislature. I was responsible for 3/4 of the state budget. And somebody comes to me and says, from a jurisdiction, oh, okay, I got my I-205 over here, but oh yeah, I want my no. You throw up in your hands and you say, you need to pick one, because not everybody's going to get their transportation funding done. And I appreciate Mr. Savas's commitment to this, and I just love your loyalty to this, Paul. I realize this board put it on our priority list in our goal-setting meeting, but we did that in mind of the fact that we thought the I-205 would be completed and funded. I do not think ODOT has made a complete funding priority to us, correct, Gary?
That's correct, right?
I believe if we take this to the legislature, it would cause confusion. Also, Paul says this is a severe crisis with everything out there. I want to remind this board of one thing. If this last weekend wasn't a severe crisis for you, then what was? If the forest fires wasn't a severe crisis, and if COVID is not a severe crisis, of which Clackamas County has not received their share of funding, this project, Sunrise Corridor, is not a severe crisis. I am wholly opposed to this. I'm going to vote no. If my board disagrees with me, that is fine. However, if I am asked in the legislature to come down and support this, I will lobby hard against it, because we have other funding priorities in this county where people's lives and homes are in danger. Gary, do we need to vote on this?
If you wish to move forward, we do need a vote. Yes.
So
Commissioner
I have
Savas
my
and
hand
Commissioner Schrader
Yep.
both have their hands up.
Yep. Am I being recognized yet?
Chair Smith.
Commissioner Savas, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I had my hand up for a little bit. So I want to remind everyone, first of all, well, let's clarify one thing first. So that is, this is not a crisis. This is a
You
This
said it-
is
Paul, you
a-
said it was. I wrote down your words, severe crisis out there in the community.
In the event, in the context of an evacuation route, it would be
If we have a-
crisis. We learned from the forest fires how much transportation, it took hours for people to get out of Estacada and Malala and points in between to get to the urban area to escape. Okay, if that did not depict an issue of an upcoming crisis, it was a crisis at the time, but a greater one in the event of a Cascadia. That was the context of which I believe we're facing a huge crisis, and I think it's going to be an embarrassment to this region. And it was in Louisiana when Katrina hit. But Katrina hit. All I remember, well, not all, but a lot of what I remember was the escape routes. People trying to escape, and the congestion and the plugging, and those are big highways. This is a 2-lane road, one each way. It's a shame that we'd be reduced to that. But this whole plan is not just about a road. Again, I think our staff kind of covered it. The material in there, if you read that, covers a number of factors that are important to this region right now. But the other thing, economically, there's a huge return on the investment. That the housing development, the property tax, however you want to look at it, there is a tremendous amount. And this is our only area in which there's opportunity for development. We have almost nothing as far as available industrial lands. Our inventory is down. This area sits hard. We have fallow lands that are waiting for the right-of-way acquisitions and the remnants to be maximized. And the other part about this is, and I think this is why our staff's responding, is during that Metro 2020 measure, the problem was that we weren't as prepared. This is a means of getting prepared. We did not have the tools to educate or the money to educate and to bring out the elements of which are so important to this part of the region. This is a great opportunity to partner with the city of Happy Valley. And lastly, ODOT does have, and we need to have a discussion about this, ODOT does have a plan for 205. And actually, it is slated to begin to go out for bid at the end of this year. So though they haven't identified exactly how they're going to do that, we've been assured that it is the first project, the major project to be sent out for bid, and it will happen this year. So I'm relatively confident that the legislature and ODOT, the OTC, are going to come up with the exact elements of how to fund 205. So I don't see it as confusing. I think that our legislators are smart enough to understand what's there, and we have a number of our legislators that reside or have their districts overlay into this part of Clackamas County. So I would encourage careful consideration and thoughtfulness in supporting this today.
Mr. Savas, I'm going to remind you of something when you talk about evacuation routes. Don't insult me. I was the one that was evacuated on a transportation route out of South Clackamas County where most of the forest fires were. I could hardly get to my home. I didn't know whether I'd have a home standing when I returned. I was one of those hundreds and thousands of people stuck on Beaver Creek Road during daylight, when daylight turned to dark and my wiper blades were going so fast because of the ash on the roads. I am very well aware of a transportation route out of South County. This does not serve South County. Additionally, my staff told me in a transportation briefing months ago that ODOT said we could either have Sunrise Corridor or I-205, but we couldn't have both. And that's why I'm sticking to this. Trent?
Thank you for that. And I'll just add that I really do appreciate your history with the legislature, because it's really hard, as you well know, to unpack those variety of funding packages and the way that they all come in through different committees. So I'm actually really grateful that you have that background. Historically, Government Affairs has agreed with your approach that the legislature or the federal government has said, pick one. You can have this $500 million project or this $500 million project. We can't give you both. We do believe, I believe, that we are prioritizing I-205 for the funding. And this, because it's such a more planning-based approach, less about the concrete, more about the community, it separates those funding streams so that it's not really competing with one another.
Well, I guess my question for this board is, if you're going to do a Hail Mary at the end of the session for our very dear needs, because as you remember, we called in the National Guard. We don't know what that price tag is going to be. You want to use it for planning for the future of umpteen years, or do you want to use your Hail Mary to help pay our bills for the National Guard, to send out SARS, for the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, who's doing thousands of door checks, of blankets, of water, of food, of heat, and on and on and on. And by the way, we're not out of this yet. We have no idea what that price tag is, because probably every generator that this county government office had went kaput on us. And we don't know what the cost of those generators are going to be. So Trent, my suggestion is this is not a funding priority for this board at the time, but every commissioner has the right to vote the way they wish. I'm going to call for a vote.
All right.
Christina.
We have a motion?
Someone has to make a motion first.
Oh, make a motion.
I move to approve.
I second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Savas and seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further discussion?
Chair Smith.
Mr. Scholl.
Trent, the Sunrise Corridor issue has been on the minds of the people of the county for a few decades at least. Okay, now we're looking at the idea of another 2 years to do a study. And the study only goes to 172nd. What I would like to say here is that the people of the county have always anticipated the development of a Sunrise Corridor that's actually a freeway to move traffic from east to west across the county. And my question for you here is there a derived idea that the Sunrise Corridor is going to end up being something like a Sunnyside Road, sort of, when it's developed? I mean, are we going to do a study to end up with something that is going to be something that the people of the county never really anticipated?
That's a really great question, Commissioner Scholl. As Commissioner Savas mentioned this, and as you mentioned as well, many decades in the process of what we've been working towards. And I think what we've been working towards is an extension of what you currently see that was finished in 2016 between 205 and 122nd, that sort of bypass that allows freight to move a little bit more freely through that area and open up the congestion that's existed there. That's been the ongoing expectation for how to get to 172nd as well. At the same time, to avoid the concern that I think you're bringing forward, is this community engagement plan is to make sure that whatever is the next step does engage the community, so it's not a surprise to anybody. We don't want it to be a surprise. We know that things have changed over the many decades since this was first designed, especially in this area and especially for priorities in the region. So that community engagement becomes even more important at that point, so that if whatever the future looks like for this area, and I'm Government Affairs Trent, not Transportation Planner Trent, Land Use Plant Trent, So I want to be clear, like the community engagement piece here is foremost important, which is why even though that part failed in the Metro measure back in November, we see the need to move this forward a little bit more urgently to make sure that the community is engaged in whatever the next step looks like. Thank you.
Chair, I have my hand up.
Yeah, everybody has their hands. Go ahead, Commissioner Schrader.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Chair. So just some institutional memory. We have really been working on the Sunrise Corridor since even before I came on board in 2003. It has always been one of our main priorities. It has been a significant priority. I-205 did not pop up until 2012. I believe that you and Chair Ludlow were here, and we agreed to add that on. My impression has always been it's more of a regional, larger project because it's like I-5, a huge freight area. For me, the Sunrise Corridor has really been specifically, as Paul said, for economic development, job creation, opening up that area for appropriate development, as well as long-term access should we have the big quake, which other than an asteroid, I think is the last possible thing that could potentially happen to us this year. I agree with what you're saying. As I've said numerous times, 2020 was hell, and in 2021, hell froze over. So I'm well aware of all the other emergency things that we've had to deal with. But I, for one, always felt that I-205, although it was a priority, really had something more to do with folks in the Stafford Triangle who evidently wanted to develop that area. So I just don't think it's as pure of heart as we would like to think it is, but that's just the way things work in the political realm, I guess. I think we should do both. I think I'm not willing, since being here so long, to give up on the Sunrise Corridor. I agree with Commissioner Savas. I certainly respect your opinion, Chair, because I like you very much and I find you fun to work with, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with this. And you know what? I never served on full Ways and Means, but I did serve on general government Ways and Means. So I got kind of a lot of that stuff too. And we both know how it works down there. And I think the bottom line is, I think we ought to stay firm on the Sunrise. And I think we ought to push the state from I-205 as it being bigger than just a Clackamas County issue, because it isn't. It's one of our main freight routes, like 205, like I-5, that connects. I mean, if I-5 goes down, if that bridge goes down, when we have a big one across the Columbia corridor, our only access right now could potentially be I-205. I just don't see it as an either or. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on this, and I just wanted to get my opinion out there. Thanks.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. So I see everything. I don't see it as either or. I think 205 is regional and it's a benefit for the entire state, and Sunrise is ours. I also am really concerned with what Chair Smith, you said about I've done Christmas tree bills. I mean, I've done let's go and advocate, get to prioritize on Christmas tree as a lobbyist, and it is not a sure way to get a planful result at all. It is just complete chaos, and that really concerns me. This proposal concerns me because I still don't get it. I mean, I'm sorry. I've read the materials, I've heard this, but I don't get why it's $4 million, and so I'm concerned about that. I think I could get there to support the concept of somehow coming up with $4 million, but I need to see where the money would be going. I also want to see more partnerships. I want to see, when you look at the map of where's the final frontier in Clackamas County, that's exactly where it is, and that's where the development's going to happen. I want to know, Happy Valley's doing the urban renewal district. What resources there are going into that planning for that community? And this is so much bigger than this. I would like to propose that we delay this. You don't need to know today. I would just like more information, especially about why we got to justify this if we are going to put our credibility behind it. So I'm not quite there yet, but I don't want it to go away, and I don't want the concept to go away. I just need more to get there.
Commissioner Schultz. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Schultz.
Yes, Trent and Jamie, I believe that this study, like mentioned before, needs to have some element in it that looks at 172nd to Highway 26. Maybe not in the complete full scope as up to 172nd. But I think doing the study without some look, some consideration for the future from 172nd to Highway 26 is going to come across to the people of the county like we're just not looking at the full picture. We're not really considering the final product, which is supposed to be a Sunrise Corridor that gets you from 205 to Highway 26.
Thank you very much for that feedback. And as I mentioned, we're looking at this as a draft document. Nothing's final. And if that's something that this board would like to see incorporated in some way, we can do that still.
And I believe that if this was put together with some element of consideration for the whole project, so that people could see what they're going to get when it's done someday, that it would be a much more, much better received. Thank you.
Commissioners, we have a motion on the table. And since the motion was made, there have been some other ideas. Do we want to go ahead and call for a vote on this?
Chair Smith, I'm going to
Mr.
withdraw my
Savas.
motion to allow my colleagues to get more information. I think that the questions that have been answered, or the questions that have been raised, there are answers to, and there's some logic to this. I am not necessarily wedded to or understand the approach of how we do this in the legislature during the legislative session. My endorsement of this is really seeing the need for the planning and being forward thinking and being very thoughtful about how we look towards the future. And that's something we really can't delay, but I'm open to maybe bring this back next week after maybe our staff can give some more details and fill in some of the blanks. There is, to Commissioner Fisher's point, there is a lot of work that's been done with Happy Valley, who is the jurisdiction there. So there is a strong relationship between the city and the county, and our staff have been working very closely together. So, and ODOT as well, to some degree, even though this is not really an ODOT project or any means, this is just planning.
So I'll stick it to withdraw the motion if we need that.
Okay, the motion has been withdrawn, excuse me, and seconded. Thank you very much. I am not wholly opposed to this, but I do think this board needs to really start seriously considering our priorities at hand and what are those priorities. And frankly, I was not prepared for this today because I've been working almost 24/7 on other issues that frankly I consider more important, and that's people's lives. I was blindsided by this today and I don't appreciate it.
Chair, could you explain that? I'm not sure how something that's posted a week ago is a blindside. I say that respectfully. I don't want to, I'm not trying to, I just don't, I'm not sure. I mean, whether it's, I don't want our staff to be somewhat shot at if they actually approached this and got approval. You and I worked together to teach on our strategy sessions to put this on the agenda. So we were part of this.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, so Paul, I'm going to answer for myself because I kind of feel that same way, that this is so important that it was really out of the blue for me too. I reviewed the materials, but this is really significant, and the level of significance of it, just being on the agenda and just talking about a policy session. I mean, maybe talking about this specific approach during an issue session or during liaison time, or just prepping us a little more for the conversation would have been very helpful. So that's all. That's from my point of view. I don't, Chair Smith can answer.
You know, that's fine. I think we've discussed this to death. I think we've given staff some direction to go forward on. Gary, I think we're going to continue to the next issue.
We're going to move on. So staff, you've gotten some feedback to come back. So I'm sorry, I got to say this. This has been on your agenda for 2 weeks. This should be no surprise to any of you. Sorry, with great respect. Please, as staff, do not demoralize staff. They're doing their jobs. And this has been on your priority list for 7 years. So, and then at your retreat, you agreed to keep this on your priority list. So with that, staff, you got some good feedback on how you may want to revise these proposals. And then you come back when the time is right, please. Okay, next session is Supportive Housing Services Measure 26-210, background and update. You are now sitting as the Housing Authority Board of Clackamas County Commissioners, although there's no decision point for you today, but you are now sitting as the Housing Authority Board. Jill Smith and Vahid Brown from the Housing Authority and Health, Housing, and Human Services will present. They are both online. So whoever would like to start, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present this afternoon. The purpose of this presentation is just to provide you all some background on the Supportive Housing Services Measure, how it came to be, the intention behind it, and kind of where we are in the planning process as of today. Commissioner Fisher has kind of been identified and named as the board liaison, and she serves on a couple of the key committees. So I think she's been doing a great job of providing updates as well. So hopefully you have a little information before we go into this. Another purpose of this update is we want to make sure that you have all your questions answered, because we will be bringing a plan before you to review in March, and an IGA with Metro and our regional partners to approve before implementation in July. So just as a quick reminder, in May 2020, this measure was approved by the regional voters, and we're partners, very close partners with Washington County and Multnomah County as we plan for implementation. We're really our intent for this work is to create a regional system for people who are high needs, homeless, with disabilities and lots of challenges to access and stay stably housed, so that if you live in Clackamas County, you have options near your home and you can stay where you're from, and you don't have to go into Gresham to the only family shelter available to you. So this is really about us working together in a unified manner to create a system that works for everybody and is equal for everybody. The funding will flow into the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. The measure is a tax, 1% marginal tax on high income earners, and it's also a business profit tax for businesses with gross receipts of more than 5 million. Clackamas County will receive 21.33% of the revenues, and that was based on estimates of population. It is open to be reassessed based on actual collections once we learn more about that. It is a new tax, and Metro is allowed to take up to 5% of that for administration of this fund. It's estimated that in year one, we will receive 24 million which is very exciting, but he's going to talk to you a little bit about comparing that number with what we're using currently to house our vulnerable neighbors. And then ongoing for the 10-year term of this measure, we're estimating about a $53 million receipt. So tremendous opportunity. And I just have to say, we're moving into this space with the intention of ending chronic homelessness in Clackamas County. We really feel, and we know that that is possible. Prioritization is something that's very important. I was at the planning tables, as was Commissioner Fisher. We really prioritized the fact that we need to serve the people that are the most difficult and hardest to serve, with the most challenges, the people that are disabled and homeless, that have been on the streets or unhoused multiple times. So not the folks who just need a little Band-Aid, and they're going to be okay and be able to be on their feet. 75% of this funding goes to the folks who are extremely low income and have one or more disabling condition and are experiencing long-term or frequent episodes of literal homelessness. That's our chronic homeless population. And then 25% of the funding can help folks who are just people experiencing homelessness that aren't necessarily disabled or are at substantial risk of homelessness. And as you know, based on all of the crisis in our county, there's a lot of folks in that category right now. Another thing I wanted to touch on briefly is, as we are successful with the chronically homeless disabled population, and we create a system that houses and stabilizes that group, we can shift our funding over to the other group. It does not have to forever be the 75-25 split. And then the last thing I want to touch on before I turn it over to Vahid to talk about planning that's underway is the fact that this is flexible money. This is funding that doesn't have all the strings and requirements that the federal, state, and other funding sources currently have, which makes it so we can plan according to the needs of our community, not according to what's happening in Multnomah County. Our priorities are what will lead our planning and talking to the people we need to house. So far, we've done tremendous outreach, and we've heard that they are, people say in Clackamas County, we need to prioritize shelter. There's very limited, almost no shelter, and behavioral health services that include addiction and mental health treatment. Those have been the top two consistently that we've heard from people that we've talked to that are substantially people of color, people in poverty, and people who are homeless. And with that, I want Vahid to take you through the planning process and where we are today.
Thank you, Jill. For the record, Vahid Brown with the Housing Authority. Christina, there were some slides for this presentation. I don't know if those are able to be shared. If not, I can just kind of verbally walk through the information.
Yes, just give me one moment.
Here they are. They're in our packet too.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I just said they're in the packet.
Okay,
I don't know if you can see me, but I got it right here.
okay. So that's fine. I can just walk through the
I've got it up, Vahid. Just give me 1 second.
okay, thank you, Christina. So as that's coming up, what I was going to kind of provide a little bit of detail on is where we're at in the local implementation planning process. If we want to advance slides, Christina, to the next one. Jill has already covered this material, and the next one, and one more. Thank you. So where we're at with our community engagement and working with our partners and with a local implementation plan steering committee is the development of a local implementation plan. And as Jill said, we'll be bringing that to the board in the coming months for your review. This is a very wordy slide, apologies for that, but wanted to provide some background for the board about what the plan has to do. So these are the required elements that shape our writing of the plan, as well as the other jurisdictions that are implementing this measure. So our plan will reflect and will closely follow these required elements, responses to these. So we have to, in our plan, base that plan on comprehensive and community engagement process that prioritizes voices of people with lived experience and communities of color, which we have done. We will include a strategy for the equitable distribution of services in the jurisdictional areas of the county. The plan must articulate a strategy for advancing racial equity, which it will do. It will review current investments as identifying gaps in services based on current investments and articulating a plan for meeting those gaps, broken down by population and service type. A description of planned investments, and Jill went over the variety of services that this measure can fund, which is pretty broad. It's really everything necessary to get very vulnerable, disabled, long-term homeless people into housing. And then a plan articulating how we'll coordinate access to services with our partners and track outcomes and ongoing reporting. So the required elements will structure the plan, and that will be the format of the plan that we'll present to you. You'll see these reflected quite closely in the plan. Next slide, please, Christina. As Jill mentioned, the funds that we're anticipating in the first year of the measure are estimated to be $24.5 million in year one, and at full taxation annually, the supportive housing services measure will bring $53 million to Clackamas County to meet the needs of these most vulnerable residents. As you can see, this is the current state of affairs when it comes to homeless services funding for Clackamas County. This is a roughly $8 million with $6.6 million from state and federal sources, $1.4 million from local, from general fund at the county level. At the county level, the majority of that $1.44 million is the annual commitment from the Board of County Commissioners to the Affordable Housing and Services Fund, which is a $1.2 million fund that supports services that are delineated here, as well as general fund commitments to emergency and severe weather shelter. So the revenue that will be coming to Clackamas County for supportive housing services really dwarfs our existing capacity and is really a game-changing amount of resources. Jill mentioned, we are looking at this as a resource that will allow us to end chronic homelessness in Clackamas County. Now, these public funding commitments delineated in this slide do not include the housing authority's funds. housing authority funds for public housing, for Section 8, for VASH and so forth. Many of those resources do serve people experiencing homelessness. They're not, some cases they are specific for, but in many cases they're not specific for people experiencing homelessness, but rather for people who are very low income. So this is simply federal, state, and local funding for homeless services and not for housing authority projects. The other thing I would note with respect to this is the supported housing services measure prohibits local jurisdictions from supplanting of funds, right? Which means if we have current commitments of local, state, and federal funds to homeless services, the measure prohibits local jurisdictions from moving funds out of those purposes to, say, roads or what have you, and supplanting those with supportive housing services dollars. The language in the measure is specific. I believe it's in your packet, but these are the current commitments, and the measure requires jurisdictions to maintain current levels unless of exigent circumstances, in which case a temporary waiver can be sought from Metro. Next slide, please, Christina.
Hey, Vahid, can I just add one statement to that before you move on? While we can't necessarily supplant, we can redirect current funding. So, which is something that we really need to do and intend to do, because as you know, the supportive housing services measure funding can only be directed and used within the urban growth boundary. So our intention would be to also end chronic homelessness by using existing funds targeted outside of the urban growth boundary. I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, Jill Tweedy Smith here. So for instance, if we were to try to get some supported housing outside of the boundary line into our more rural areas, you're saying that because of this measure, it would free up some of that funding that we could use it, for instance, in Estacada, Sandy, or Malala. Is that what you mean when you say that?
Exactly.
Thank you very much. I just wanted a clarification on that.
So, Chair, can I ask
Yes,
a
go
question?
ahead.
Could we get an assessment of how much that money will be redirected, how much there will be available for our rural areas? I've been having conversations with the mayor of Estacada, quite frankly, and they're very interested in actually picking out sites for affordable housing in Estacada and looking at a model for that. So I would really be curious to see if you can monetize that for us. And also, I do want to let you get through all the rest of this, but when you say communities of color, could you give us a map of where those communities are? I think we have them somewhere within the urban growth boundary and outside of the urban growth boundary as well. Is it mostly, is it African American? Is it Black? Is it Hispanic? Is it white adjacent or Russian community? It would be really good to get a sense of, when we talk about communities of color in our county, what that really means, who are the folks we're talking about, and what the demographic is. Thank you. And I'd really like to get that information ASAP.
Sure, we're happy to gather that for you. And just really quickly before I give it back to Vahid, the measure funding the measure, not the bond, the Metro Housing Bond can be used for housing development. The measure funding can only be used for capital for shelter acquisition. It cannot be used for affordable housing development. So the homeless services funding that we're redirecting may be eligible to use for capital. That's something that I need to look at, Commissioner Schrader, and I will let you know. We'll also get you the information on diversity across the county.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Commissioner Schrader and Chair Smith. A few slides on community engagement work. So we did a extensive community engagement over the course of the development of this plan. I think 17 or 18 engagements with community groups and advisory bodies, as well as contracts with the consultants Unite Oregon and the Coalition of Communities of Color to do engagement with communities of color in Clackamas County to help inform our plan. And in all of those engagements, we were eliciting information about specifically three things in addition to other questions. gaps in our current system, barriers that people face to ending their homelessness. So that was one question. Barriers specifically experienced by communities of color in Clackamas County, and then funding priorities that members of the community would like to identify for the measure moving forward. This slide demonstrates or lists the top answers, the most frequently repeated answers in our engagement with respect to the gaps. So when we asked what's missing in our current system, what are the primary barriers for people experiencing homelessness to end their homelessness? And these were the top answers: a lack of effective behavioral health services, and that would include addiction and recovery services, a lack of shelter and transitional emergency housing resources, not enough rental assistance funding, qualification requirements for accessing services, and a lack of supportive housing system navigation and programs for self-sufficiency and so forth. Moving to the next slide, the most frequent responses we receive from our community with respect to barriers experienced by communities of color, both in our own engagements and with those conducted by our consultants, these were the top answers. A lack of culturally specific and appropriate services. So this was identified by the community in Clackamas County. A mistrust of government, a disproportionate issues with rental screening barriers experienced by people of color, and other barriers in accessing services, including bias, a lack of coordination, not enough options or ways to access the coordinated entry system, as well as other equity issues that are delineated here. Moving to the next slide. And I'm going through these briefly, commissioners, but our community engagement report, which will be an addendum to the plan that we will be presenting to you in the coming months, includes much more detail about the outcomes of our engagement. Finally, in our engagement with all of our community partners, we also asked for priorities moving forward as we implement this plan. And the top 4 priorities that we heard from the community are listed here: shelter and transitional housing services with services attached, low and no barrier behavioral health services, so mental health and addiction recovery support services, improved service navigation and integration. This speaks to that difficulty people have in navigating what is often a complicated system to get help, and creative supportive housing opportunities and affordable housing units. Now, as Jill said, this measure will not create units. It's not a revenue that can be spent on development, but this was just reflecting what our community heard, is that there's a lack of housing in general. That continues to be a theme that we hear from the community. Next slide, please. And Jill, this is to you.
Okay, I think I already touched on a few of these items, but the next step, and hopefully in March, fingers crossed, if all goes well, you'll have the opportunity to review this plan, which will contain a lot of amazing information on community engagement, and will also touch on all the required elements. The Regional Oversight Committee, which has 5 members representing Clackamas County, will review the plan, refer it on to Metro Council for approval. I know Multnomah County is in the approval process right now. Washington County and Clackamas County are pretty close to the same on our timeline. And truly, the timeline is just that we are ready to implement by July 1st. And as I said previously, we will have to enter into an IGA, which you'll have the opportunity to review and approve, and County Council will be deep working with Metro Council on that. And then we're putting together a team right now. We're building this plane as we plan, basically trying to make sure that we are ready to push this money out into the community. And that is the intention. Our intention is to have more contracted community-based organizations providing services to people in need than we've ever had before in Clackamas County. And we're extremely excited about that. Next slide, please. That's the end. And we'll open it up. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Yes, Commissioner Savas, go ahead.
Yeah, Jill, a lot of material here. Appreciate the report. I noticed the committee members have got some little bit of bio on each of them. Sounds like we got a great group of people there. But this is not necessarily solely about related to housing, this comment I'm about to make, but it is it is relevant. And that is my concern. And I know that our elected roles, apparently Commissioner Fisher's, the county commissioners of other counties, is ex officio as a non-voting member. But, because there are so many tax dollars, public dollars at stake here, the metrics, the measurements, and I did see some of that there, but the accountability aspect of that is usually borne by elected officials ultimately, right? Mm-hmm. So if we are partners of this plan, but we Clackamas County or Commissioner Fisher, for example, doesn't have a vote or a meaningful vote, that it seems like when we populate a number of committees, again, not just housing, but other topics, when we populate them and they seem to be making the decisions, but yet there's no accountability, it concerns me to some degree. So there ought to be greater coordination. Now, granted, at the top is Metro and they're elected and there's accountability in that regard. But I had a great conversation with one of the Metro counselors here recently, and that Metro counselor mentioned to me that Metro's goal to level out, or I don't have the word for word goal in front of me. I wasn't presented with that, but basically their assurance of ending homelessness by 2025, which is about 4.5 years from now. And I think that's a great goal if we can accomplish it. Actually, that'd be fantastic if we could actually accomplish that. But my concern is that when I read the material, a number of the grids showed percentages and not numbers of people served. And I saw numbers in there for providing services, whether it was emergency services or whether it was other supportive services, ranging from $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, almost $6,000 per household. And I'd like to know how many, with so many elements that this supportive services measure provides, and that just being one portion of it. I believe page 18 and 19 of the report and page 28 and 29 of the packet in particular I'm speaking to. I'm wondering if we have a better idea of how many people we're actually going to be able to serve in that, and how much money and where the needs are is going to be available. And if we're to have a goal, a regional goal of ending homelessness, I sure like to know if we can actually get there. But percentages are important. I think a percentage is a good number to have. I don't want to say it ought to be substituted for having the actual number of people served, but I think both. When it comes to accountability, I think we actually need to know what those are. So number one, just a concern overall with accountability. Number two, the numbers, again, getting a better understanding. And I'd like to know really how many people we're going to be able to serve of the people that are homeless in Clackamas County. And are we making ground on that? Is the homeless population growing or is it not growing? And I just got concerns about that. Mental health, I saw some mention of that. Again, I don't know if we could have some kind of a matrix that showed where the dollars are being directed into service levels like addiction, drugs, alcohol, mental health, food, nutrition, housing, others. If we could have an idea where those dollars are directing by service and also the number of people that are being served, I would really greatly appreciate that.
I think those are very legitimate and reasonable requests. And I just want to assure you that at this time, we're creating a very high level plan as required by Metro. So we're eligible to start to receive funding on July 1st. Our intention is to create a data system so that we can provide you exactly all of those things that you're requesting. We need to know the inflow of people into homelessness, the outflow, if we're making progress or not. And we have resources to do this unlike ever before. And one other thing so you'll be getting those reports as we move out of planning into implementation. We will be standing up an expanded Clackamas County Oversight body that will likely be expanded above and beyond the continuum of care. And I think that it yet to be, we haven't made the determination if electeds should be part of that, but if that's an interest, we can certainly talk about that. There's also another body being formed that will have elected representation on it. It's the Regional Oversight Body. And that body, we're discussing what it might look like right now. that we have electeds will be representing each county, and their role will be to oversee the actual funding being invested to create the regional system. And that is a really important committee that will be coming to you in the next few months to ask for who, who would like to serve and be part of that. So there's more coming. I just want to make sure you know that we're just at this really high level planning phase.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jill. I'm trying for us to be brief because we're already behind schedule, but Commissioner Scholl would like to speak, but before that, we have Housing Commissioner Ann Leanstra, who is participating by Zoom, and I would like her to make some comments, or does she have any questions or recommendations? Ann, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome, Ann.
Thank you. I am very concerned that we make sure we direct the money to those who are the most vulnerable. And I think this measure will do an excellent job. I'm not to a stage yet where I'm going to make any policy recommendations. I haven't studied it enough, but I'm watching it very closely.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ann. Commissioner Scholl's in the queue.
Yes, looking at a full spectrum approach to solving homelessness. In your slide here, you have a lack of behavioral health services. Can the Regional Oversight Committee look at a plan for a mental health and addiction intake and assessment facility to be used by our police officers and sheriff departments in the region to preclude taking those arrestees who have a mental or addiction problem to the jail? The second part of my question is on transitional homelessness. Will the Regional Oversight Committee have some sort of plan or coordination into the free market construction of homes that people can actually qualify to buy to help solve the transitional homeless problem? Those two things I just would ask you to look at. Thank you.
Those are good comments, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Schrader, would you like to make a comment?
Just one more question. I'm sorry I'm being thick-headed today, so I apologize for that. With our outreach with the communities of color, that was the entire county, correct? Not just under the urban growth boundary? Okay. So those barriers that are not experienced, it's wholesale geographically throughout the county at this point.
Yes.
Back, but yet.
And it will continue. We have no intention of stopping that work.
Okay, that's good. That's kind of what I wanted just to clarify in my own head with this. So when I look at the services we can provide with this revenue, is there anything there we're really not doing right now? Is there anything on this list? And mostly I'm asking because we've had a 10-year plan to end homelessness since I've been here. And so is this going to finally get us there? I mean,
so yes, it could get us there. And we don't have transitional housing anymore because HUD has decided that's not something that they any longer want to fund. So just at a quick glance, that's one thing we don't provide at all anymore.
Okay.
And there's also identified a gap in culturally specific providers in Clackamas County. We have a very small organization that provides services to Indigenous folks, Native American and Alaskan, folks that are transitioning out of incarceration. Red Lodge, that's a culturally specific organization.
Yeah.
It's quite small, right? And it serves a very small number of people. So we don't otherwise have culturally specific service providers, and that's going to be a priority focus, I think, in the plan that will be coming forward.
Well, we have done a good job with the Latinx community, have we not? With culturally specific, we have a number of groups that do that kind of outreach, don't we?
Yeah, there, I mean, Catholic Charities does work with farm worker housing in the rural areas. And I think that the EOC has done a great job in working with culturally competent and culturally appropriate providers in the, like Ant Farm and so forth in the provision of rental assistance. It's just an area where I think we see a need for growth.
Okay. And I do see the second bullet on the next slide, include a strategy for equitable geographic distribution of services. I appreciate that. And I am understanding that the services you can provide with this revenue, you can keep those at a current service level and then take the other revenue and use it for other geographic areas. Is that how I'm understanding what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That really helps. Okay.
Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, real quickly, I think just to build on or get to a question that Commissioner Schrader posed. And I had a conversation with a different Metro counselor, so this was the same one, with regard to mental health, addiction, and drug and alcohol addiction capacity in the region. And that counselor was under the impression that the Unity Center and CATSI were adequate for all of our needs. And I just want to, because we have heard several times that we do not have adequate capacity. So that's one unmet need, as I understand it. Is there any way we can get either a regional understanding of that need, or do we have capacity, actually? Adequate capacity?
So a large percentage of people that are homeless have severe and persistent mental illness. And this whole measure's focus is on housing people and retaining housing. So we have been challenged to house and keep housed. And the only way folks will stay housed is if the wraparound services that they need, which is behavioral health and mental health services, are provided to them. And I think one of the challenges is they may be provided in ways that are not accessible to some of these folks, or just aren't working for them because they just rotate back into homelessness repeatedly over and over again. So we have a problem to solve. How do we, and we've got people out there that do it better than we do, a lot better. And this funding is an opportunity for us to try different solutions.
Well, it is one of the causes of homelessness. And if we can't address the cause for some of these people falling back into homelessness, we're not going to succeed.
I agree.
So
Okay, Commissioner
one of my
Fisher,
concerns is that
I'm
I just
sorry.
think fundamentally, we have a responsibility to everyone, especially those that are in need. Those are the most vulnerable, to help them. But as a region, as elected leaders, we need to demonstrate the leadership and the accountability to make sure it happens. And I still cannot, I'm having a hard time fathoming. Maybe Commissioner Fisher, being on the committee, can speak to that, but I'm struggling with this one, because to me, that's got to be a top priority.
Okay, I'm going to make a recommendation here, Board. I understand this is a very impassioned topic for us all. We have a wonderful opportunity with this funding stream. We are running behind, and I think our most important and lengthy topic is yet to come, and that's Commissioner Liaison duties. I'm going to recommend that we have a longer discussion and flesh out some of the current concerns by the rest of the commissioners, Gary, maybe before the March proposal comes in. Commissioner Fisher, do you have any really short comments as we finish this up?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what's important is the dialogue that we're having. And so, Commissioner Savas, I'm happy just to talk about all of these issues, and because we don't have all the answers, but having the discussion is really important. One piece that wasn't talked about that is absolutely critical for us to remember and to hold on to is that the cost to our entire system of homelessness in regards to law enforcement being used for, like when I was talking with our Peace Officers Association president, about 50% of their calls out are because of homelessness. And also the emergency room rotating in and out, and the incredible societal cost for healthcare due to homelessness. So there are a couple reports. There's actually 3 really excellent studies that looked at all of those issues that served as the basis for this measure. And I just want to let people know that research has been done, and as a Clackamas County, I really want us through this plan to integrate, because we have the public safety where it totally fits, of having public safety not do the work and really building in the navigation resources and the support and the case management to get those people out of the public safety system and into.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. We need to be brief, and that's something that maybe that you can work with staff to bring back, and with your recommendations, with Commissioner Savas, I want to make sure that your concerns are met as well, questions can be answered. And Board, I would request that you submit your questions to Jill and Vahid ahead of time so they can prepare the answers for us, so we can spend our valuable time on directed questions and directed answers. I think this is a 100,000-foot level. A lot of discussion was happening, and it's good. But Gary, I recommend, can we go ahead on to the next item?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Jill and Vahid, for your presentation. Next, you are now sitting back as the Board of County Commissioners for Clackamas County. We have Board of County Commissioner Committee and Liaison Assignments. Tracy Moreland from County Administration will present. Go ahead, please, Tracy.
Thank you. Tracy Moreland, County Administration. Thanks for your time today. So periodically, the board convenes, especially when new commissioners take office, to discuss your committee and liaison assignments. In your packet is a list of vacancies and boards and committees that the board currently serves on. It's not an exhaustive list. It doesn't represent everything that you'll do during the year or things that you're asked to participate in, but the list has what committees commissioners required to serve on, and also internal county committees that the board commissioners requested to serve on or has interest in. And Chair Smith, I know that we're short on time, so if
Well,
you...
we're going to take whatever necessary time
Okay.
that we do on this. I reviewed the list. I've spent a lot of time on this. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the importance of this particular list. Things have changed since January 4th, just a tad bit.
Yes.
But I would like to go through it with each commissioner. I want to know what each commissioner wants to do. I have taken some topics in some areas that are of great importance to me. I will lead off with that, with what I want to do, and some of these are mandated because of the chair position. Also, at the very end, on special or temporary appointments, I have 3 special assignments that I think this board should look at carefully, and I would like your participation on that. First of all, according to this little agenda that we have that Tracy put together, shall we start with the Association of Oregon Counties? There are some steering committees that are vacant in yellow. We have public safety, public lands and natural resources, and governance and revenue that are vacant. We have Transportation and Community Development Committee, Savas Schrader, Health and Human Services Fisher, Veterans Schrader. And then, as you can see, I don't need to read the continued list of this. I guess what I need to know, have these been expired? Are these assignments from the AOC? What's the status of this, Gary?
So these are the positions. I think they're annual positions, January to December, but you can come and go as you wish, and it's with AOC, and we don't need any representation, or we could have multiple representation.
Okay, well, I think that the best way to do this, board, is I'm just going to throw it out here, and whoever wants to raise their hand and serve on it, have at it. If that's your passion, if that's your interest. First off, steering committees, public safety, do I have any takers?
I'll take it.
Commissioner Scholl, for public safety, do we have anybody else?
Commissioner Savas has his hand raised.
Commissioner Savas.
Well, I'll go ahead and just continue to I just want to just mention that that these are all voluntary. So if 5 of us want to serve on public safety, for example, we can't.
Yeah, I know they're voluntary, Commissioner Savas. That's why I've asked for people to raise their hands if they want to serve on that. Anybody else for public safety?
So I attend those as able. I don't always go, but
That's fine. That's fine. Just to get an idea.
Put my name down there.
On public safety too, Commissioner Fisher. Public lands and natural resources.
I like it.
Commissioner Scholl. Okay. Anybody else? Governance and revenue. Would anybody like to serve on that?
Chair Smith, what do they do on that?
Well, I'm not sure, Gary. What do they do on that?
Actually, Commissioner Schrader, can you answer that, having been on the board? Is she there?
Oh, Commissioner Schrader, you're on mute.
They look at anything that really comes out of, obviously, the Revenue Committee, taxation, unfunded mandates, the kinds of things that, like you say, the legislature may be doing, and we're kind of saying, wait a minute, we're partners. You can't just say, now the counties need to do this without an opportunity for us to understand where the funding is going to come from.
Yeah, okay.
It's actually a pretty significant committee, and it's a really interesting committee to be on. I'm
Okay.
already on. I want to keep the two committees I have.
Yeah,
but
I
think-
figured you did. And Commissioner Scholl has expressed an interest in this
Good.
as well.
Good.
And these are meetings for Zoom, right?
For
For
now,
now.
yes.
Yeah.
For now, and there could be conflicts too on some of these meetings that maybe, you can't attend, but, just work it out the best you can. Anybody else for governance and revenue?
Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Commissioner Scholl, yeah, would like that. Transportation and community development. Currently, we have Commissioners Savas and Schrader.
Yeah, I'd like to keep working with Paul, if that's okay.
Okay, Commissioner Schrader would like that. Commissioner Savas, are you interested?
Yes, of course.
Okay, good. We have two there. Health and Human Services. I have Commissioner Fisher down for that. Would you like to continue?
Yes, I'm vice chair, so I can't quit.
Well, okay, well, there you go. That works now, doesn't it? Veterans Committee, we have Commissioner Schrader.
I wonder
Okay.
Does
We
Commissioner
have Board of Directors, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, that is one. I'm just on the board of directors forever because I was past president.
That's
So-
okay. I like having you there. Thank you.
Oh,
Budget
yeah.
and Finance, Commissioner Fisher. Do you want to continue with that?
Yeah, I have to. I don't
Okay.
get a choice.
Membership Committee Representative, Commissioner Schrader.
Schrader, yeah.
Okay. Then we're moving down to the Legislative Committee. Membership is by district, county, or presidential appointment. Current Clackamas County Commissioners with Legislative Committee memberships are Martha Schrader, because you're past president. Sonia Fisher is the District 8 Chair. Has that expired?
Nope, it's just started.
It just started. Well, okay, good for you. And Commissioner Savas, you are appointed to that because of a population over 250,000. Is that a current lineup we're going with? Yes. Gary
Those are
says
voted on,
yes.
those positions are voted on by the District 8 members of the 3 counties.
Mhm.
So
I'm just confirming that the commissioners want to do that. I'm not assuming anything on this paper. I'm asking each one of you individually if that's okay with you. Now, we're going to move on to the National Association of Counties. Board of Directors, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, those appointments for NACO are done by the Association of Oregon Counties, and they've reappointed me to the board.
Okay, good.
And so are all the other ones that I'm on. Those come from AOC.
Okay, Community Economic and Workforce Development, Schrader. International Economic Development Task Force, Schrader. Large Urban County Caucus, Schrader. Thank you for serving on those. I appreciate it. Also, Veterans and Military Families, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, and if Commissioner Scholl would like to join, or anyone else wants to.
Yeah, I'd like to.
And
No.
Commissioner Scholl would like to join you on that, Commissioner Schrader.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Tracy, you got that?
Yep.
Okay.
We need to
we'll
let AOC know. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move back up to the Transportation Steering Committee at NACO. Commissioner Savas, would you like to continue with that?
Yep, I'm one of the vice chairs.
You're vice chair, thank you. See, I don't have that information down if you're vice chairs, it's just not on my paper. Human Services and Education Steering Committee, Commissioner Fisher. Okay. Education, Children and Families Subcommittee, Commissioner Fisher, thank you very much for serving. Now we're going down to Metro. Before I get through NACO and AOC, are we okay on we're all okay on that, commissioners? You know what, you can change, you can do something else when you want to later. We're just kind of getting, I'm rushing through this part because I'm really interested in the county appointments. Okay. Metro, we have the Metro Joint Policy Advisory Committee on JPAC. Commissioner Savas, would you like to continue with that?
Yes.
I think that's very important. You've served transportation issues for a long time, and you're very knowledgeable. We have an alternate JPAC vacancy.
I'd like to do that with Paul.
Commissioner Scholl would like that. Got that, Tracy? We have a Metro Policy MPAC. Commissioner Schrader, are you wanting to do that?
Yeah, I'll keep it.
You'll keep it, okay. Gee, the enthusiasm is overwhelming. Okay, we also have an alternative for MPAC that's available.
I think you want to be the alternate chair.
You want to be the alternate? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't see any takers. We're going to leave that vacant for now, and if somebody else wants to do that later. Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee, ex officio, Commissioner Fisher.
Yep.
Okay. Brownfields Task Force, Commissioner Savas.
That no longer exists. You can scratch that off.
Okay.
What did he say?
It no longer exists.
Okay, we'll cross that off. Well, just lighten your load a little. Statewide Regional Solutions Advisory Committee, Schrader and Willamette Falls Lock State Commission.
Yeah, and the Regional Solutions is again an AOC appointment. And the Willamette Falls Lock State Commission is a gubernatorial appointment.
Is a what?
So-
I didn't hear that.
Governor appoints.
Okay, good. Well, that's, okay, that's
Oh.
wonderful.
And they've already kept me, so.
Yes,
Okay.
I appreciate your work on that. Regional. The R1 Act, Savas, alternate needed. Commissioner Savas, do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'm the vice chair.
Okay, you're vice chair, and we need an alternate.
I'll do that, Chair.
Commissioner Scholl, it will be your alternate. The RDPO, that is me. I attended the first meeting last Friday. No, I've attended 2 meetings on that because I'm taking a huge interest in disaster management in the county, regionally and at a national level, just so my commission knows that's kind of where I'm headed in my area of focus, along with a couple others. Thank you very much for that. Reimagine Oregon, Fisher and Savas.
Does that still exist, Sonia?
That still exists. I don't know.
Yeah, it still exists.
I don't know how often it meets or what your commitment to that is. I think you two can decide what you want to do.
Yeah, I think there's a website. This board will probably need to be briefed. We've made commitments that staff is following through on, and it's just a process, right, Gary?
Yes.
I don't think there's anything currently scheduled.
Nothing pending, no.
The next 3 topics, Willamette Falls Landings Heritage Area Coalition, the Willamette Falls Management Operations Committee, Willamette Falls Legacy Project Partners Group. We have Schrader, and Schrader Savas on the last one.
I would like to keep those if that's okay.
Absolutely. Commissioner Savas, do you want to serve on the Partners Group?
Yes, I want to continue doing that.
Good,
Thank
I'm
you.
glad. I'm glad. This is really important work as well. Of course, everything we do is really important, and I'm really glad to see the transition of the knowledge base going from the past appointments onto these appointments. Okay, now coming up to the county appointments. West Advisory Board, we have Commissioner Schrader, and is that, are there 2 commissioners that need to do that?
Yeah, it always is a good idea.
Okay.
But I really want to do it because we've been getting very involved, obviously been getting very, very involved in water policies. So I would like to stay on that. I know Commissioner Savas has a lot of expertise in that area. Is that something you want to join, or does Commissioner Scholl or Fisher? I mean,
I have a lot on my plate, so I'm trying to manage what I
Yeah,
have.
I would kind of consider that for me on policy, but it's going to have to depend. It's not going to be my priority, but you can put me down with a question mark on that.
okay. And
Economic.
I will always come back and brief anyway.
Yes, that would be fine. The Economic Development Commission, Savas, and there's a vacancy.
I'd love to do that too. If we
Okay,
could.
put Schrader on that.
Yep, and I'd like to continue my role there.
Yep. I wonder if we can tag team with Paul. on that.
Vacancy, there's total vacancy on the County Parks Advisory Board. Commissioner Scholl, are you interested in that?
I certainly can do it.
Yes. Is there anybody that wants to join Commissioner Scholl? Okay, County Forestry Advisory Board. Commissioner Scholl, would you like to do that?
I would love to do that.
He would like to do that. Anybody else would like to join him? Fair Board, Commissioner Scholl, would you like to do that?
I like the fair.
You love the fair. Does anybody want to join Commissioner Scholl for the Fair Board? LIPSIC, Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, that would be me. Anybody is welcome to join me.
Yeah, I get those meetings. I'll just keep getting those on my calendar.
Commissioner Fisher, are you joining me on those?
Yeah, as able. They conflict with other stuff I'm doing, but if I
Right.
can, I like to
Okay,
participate.
that's fair enough. Veterans Advisory Committee, Commissioner Scholl, are you interested?
Yes.
Being
Yes.
a 25-year lieutenant colonel, I think you would do well on that.
Martha, are you going to be on there
Yeah.
too?
Can I join you with that, Commissioner? Would you
Oh,
mind?
I would hope you would.
All right, okay.
Tourism Development Council.
They, Chair,
What?
they have asked that, if you don't mind.
I didn't hear what you say.
She wants to
I
do
said,
that.
I said they asked me, I said.
Oh,
I
good,
talked to
okay.
Have me do that, so I'll do that.
That's fine. I don't know if we need another one or not. Probably, I don't think
Yeah.
so. I think
Wants to-
you can handle that. Internal Audit Committee, according to our rules, Commissioner Savas and myself, Chair and Vice Chair, are on that. Clackamas Workforce Partnership, I know you want to do that, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, it's
Does anybody
been,
want to join her?
yeah, anybody want to join?
Nope,
Or some-
okay. Climate Exchange, Commissioner Schrader, Savas, and Fisher. I think you probably want to continue your work on that, I'm assuming.
Yep,
Commissioner Fisher, yes? Okay. C4, Savas Schrader.
Yep,
C4 Metro Subcommittee, Savas Schrader.
yep.
Hospital Facilities Authority Board must be held by the chair. In fact, I had my first meeting with Kaiser Permanente this week. It was really wonderful. Community Health Council, Commissioner Fisher.
Yep.
Okay, good. Administrators,
Along those lines, there's another group that I've been participating on that's not on here. It's the Public Health Council that it should go.
and you know what? We're going to do that at the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anything that's not on here,
Oh, thank
commissioners,
you.
yeah, we're going to have opportunities to do that. Thanks for bringing that up. Community Health Council, oh, say we did that, right? Administrators Housing Strategy Meeting, Savas and Schrader.
So this is a question for Gary. Are you going to reinstate that, Gary, or should we scratch that?
Every side.
My question for this board, do we need it with everything going on in housing with some of these new initiatives? I'm going to say no. I don't think we need that.
I think we should take it off of Gary's plate.
I think we can take it off. Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County Steering Committee, Fisher and Savas.
Yep.
I'd like to join that occasionally. Kind of.
Yeah.
I can't take every single one of them, but since we've been having some conversations with some of our rural counties about housing, and some of those folks participate, I'd like to at least be in the loop with it. I don't have to be a principal, but I just kind of want to be aware.
Okay, the following committees and boards are voluntary BCC participation. We have Safe Communities, Drive to Zero. We have
I'm
the
happy
C-
to pick that one up if no one wants it.
I don't, Paul, I don't think you're going to be outbid for it. So you want to
Okay.
take it?
It's a natural one for transportation. Yes.
Okay,
I'll do
yeah,
it.
it kind of does, yes. CCOs, Commissioner Fisher?
Sure.
Okay, Clackamas Town Center Regional Advisory Committee, Commissioner Savas.
We haven't met in like 2 or 3 years, so.
Is that even
sure.
active?
I think that's gone.
Okay, let's take it off. You don't need something on your plate that, I mean, we got a lot of stuff here. Courthouse Liaison, is that for the new, building of the new courthouse, Gary? Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be on that. Commissioner Fisher, you're already on that. Okay, we'll tag team.
Yep.
NRAC, Commissioner Schrader is on that. I would like to join you because of the farming initiative. I think that will blend well with those areas?
Yep. And we've already started it, Commissioner. We really need to get you up to speed, Chair. 'Cause
Okay, you need
it's-
to get me up to speed for that. I'm a sponge.
It's
Greater
re-
Portland, Inc., Board of Directors, Commissioner Schrader.
Yep, like to keep that.
Safe Place, Family Justice, Fisher and Savas.
Yep.
Clackamas County Business Alliance, we all do that. Now, the special committees, I have 3 special assignments that I would like our board to take a look at based on our goal-setting meeting that we just had back whenever, a month ago. And those are this, a public safety liaison, mainly to the sheriff's office, a farming initiative, and then a new group that I think we all should serve on, and it's called the Emergency Management Coalition Groups. I would like us to continue with our emergency preparedness that we've established during the ice storms, that were probably established during the fires, and we continue with that because I think we need to be more prepared, and we're not prepared. And I would like us to work, all 5 of us, to work directly with Nancy Bush and others and what that looks like moving forward. I would like to see some of these regional warming centers be almost permanent in nature, in that we can call on them at a moment's notice and not wait a week and a half to try to get a warming shelter because somebody is without power during the middle of winter. So I'm really putting that as a priority. It also goes, I'm also taking the National FEMA classes, which, by the way, have not been on my calendar yet. So I will be a certified FEMA person, hopefully, within the next year. So I'm really taking this type of stuff serious for our county because I do not believe our county is in a safe position to be in. Regarding the farming...
Oh, Chair, could I join you with that as time allows? Because I'm interested, used to be on the disaster preparedness, and maybe you and I can work on the farming initiative and that. You know, I think it'd be fun, but that's up to you if that's okay.
Are you talking about the farming initiative, Martha?
I'm talking about the farming initiative, what we've done so far, but also I'm really interested in disaster preparedness. Because I was on the group when I left to go to the Senate, and then Jim took that over. So I would like to see if it's okay to join you upon occasion. That's all I'm asking.
Gary will let you know on that. Is it okay if she joins us? It's a 5-county coalition group of people, I think by invitation, but I would love to have you there. But we'll find out. I can always use another set of ears. Nancy Bush serves on that with me.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. The farming initiative, we set that as a goal. It's going to be very hard to accomplish. I would like to take that. Is there any other commissioners, or maybe you all want to join me on that?
No. Well, yes, Chair, I'd like to really work on that too. We can dig out some of the stuff we did in economic development with, he's not with us anymore. I'm going blank on his name. But we even have an established farming program, young farmer program at Clackamas Community College and stuff like that we need to refresh.
I would love to know about that too, Commissioner Schrader, and anybody else. Public Safety Liaison, specifically the Sheriff's Office, although we do have a courthouse liaison, so I think we're kind of covered on this, but I do want to create this other liaison committee duties with the Sheriff's Office. Is there anybody who wants to join me on that?
I'd love to.
Okay, Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Scholl, I would welcome your participation on that as well, Savas. And then there are some other committees listed here that I don't know if they're enforced or not, and the Autonomous Vehicles Task Force.
Yeah, that one's expired. You can scratch
Expired,
that off.
okay. Well, Oak Grove, Lake Oswego, Agalo Policy Advisory Committee?
That one expired as well.
Oh, good. TriMet STIP Advisory?
Continue to do that one, yes.
You want that one?
Yes, got to continue to do
Okay,
that one,
good.
yes.
And the Oregon City Westland Bike Ped Project Liaison?
Yep, I'll continue that. That's temporary as well, so that'll expire probably before the end of the year.
Okay,
Usually.
good. Well, you just let us know what happens with that, Commissioner Savas. Now, with this in mind, Commissioner Fisher, you had something not on the list, and what was that?
Oh, yes, we have a public health council.
The Public Health Council.
It used to be an advisory group, and it evolved to be a council, and I've been participating. I would like to continue.
And what is that exactly? It's just a group from,
That advise not just our county staff, but also it has been elevated to advise us as a commission on all matters public health.
okay, good. Does anybody want to join Commissioner Fisher on that?
I'd like to join. That'd be
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Fisher,
Schrader.
Schrader. Is there anything else that commissioners want to do that's not on the list? And you know, you can do it. I mean, it doesn't have to be on the list for you to participate in anything. I just want to make sure that we're happy with what we're doing
Yeah.
for the next year.
There are just some things that I do that aren't really on the list. They could be, but when I'm able, there are a couple groups that are just so great in getting information. We have a group in Clackamas County, it's the Continuum of Care for all the services related to housing, and it's a lot of the providers talk, and that's a meeting that's at 9:30 on, I can't remember which day, but it's an excellent meeting, and I jump on that when I can. And there's also a lot of chambers, which I jump on when I can to those meetings. It might be a good idea, maybe not for today, but at some point, that we really look at all of our chambers and sort of divide those so we have a presence throughout the county for the different chambers and their different.
Why don't we
networking events.
have our staff take a look at those chambers, and then Tracy, over the year, offer those up to commissioners. Commissioners can take one, or two commissioners can take one, and we can just kind of, like you say, pop in. They meet monthly, don't they?
Well, some of them are
Yeah,
weekly.
for the most part, if I could just jump in. So I regularly attend as best as possible the North Clackamas Chamber, so you can jot me down for that one if you want to start.
Yeah, and I regularly attend them too. I try to go to their public policy sessions whenever I can.
That's
North
good. Chambers,
Yep.
Savas, and Schrader, okay. Yeah. And I'm going to instruct staff that when my calendar allows,
And Chair, the other thing is that I'm in close contact with the ESD and the superintendents. I'll be actually meeting with them. That's kind of something that I've kind of looped back to. And, you know, that's kind of it kind of dovetails with workforce development, actually. So,
okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Schrader, you mentioned something to me regarding re-upping our presence with the National Guard. What's that about?
Yes. Well, I had a conversation with General Stencil the other day. In prior years, I was very close to General Reese, General Hawkinson, and General Stencil. And while General Stencil, I did not know. So I asked Tracy to get a meeting with him and the Deputy Director of the Oregon Military Department. And I have found out that there are some huge gaps with us working with them more directly. They did not know about our Veterans Village. They didn't know about the Clayton War housing. They've been working very diligently on the Oregon Military Museum. They would like to have us see the Military Museum, and they'd like to tour the housing to see what we're doing for veterans. They still are dealing with multiple deployments. And we used to be aware of those deployments, and we were instrumental in helping Clackamas Community College set up their Veterans Center. They've gotten more awards than any other community college in the center in the country for being veteran friendly. And they have also asked me to have a meeting with the director of the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs. I was very close to Cameron Smith. There is a new director, and she is asked to meet up with me. And maybe that's something Commissioner Scholl would like to work with.
Yeah, Commissioner Scholl has indicated that he does want to do this.
Okay.
Can we think of a name for this that's kind of all-encompassing?
I would be like the Veterans Advice. I mean, I think it has to be.
But it's not veteran. It's really not veterans. We already have I don't want to use the term veterans.
Yeah, it's
How about
liaison to Camp Withicum, I guess.
Military liaison.
How about military liaison?
Military liaison to Camp Withicum, yeah.
Let's do that. Matilda Liaison at Camp Withicum.
Right, and then the other piece of this is, remember, they do all kinds of national repair work for night goggles and for pumps and for all. They are a huge economic driver in our county, and they actually have a huge economic development role. And back in the day, when General Caldwell was not retired, we were very, very involved with them. And we were very involved in connecting them to manufacturers for military kinds of equipment, like the Humvees that Miles Fiberglass developed that could be developed in the field. So they have a big economic development presence as well.
Okay, you know what, it sounds like you're gonna be really busy on this one. They have a lot of moving parts, and then this is really nice. Once we get, going on this and we get our feet on the ground more, so to speak, we can expect reports back from our commissioners when appropriate, when they meet, as to what's going on with that. Gary, what part of the agenda or our meeting structure do we want that to have happen on?
So in the past, we have used the issues time under commissioner updates. We also put liaison updates so that on a regular basis, the liaisons can update each other.
Why don't we title something commissioner comments / liaison updates during those Tuesday meetings? Yep. Also, at the end of our business meeting, commissioner comments, you can also mention that because that's televised and goes public. So I would recommend that you let the folks know what you're doing too, because I think it's important.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of stuff we do around here.
There's another group, the leaders, Paul's raising his hand too, but leaders of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and that's another group. That
that's a good
attend
idea.
As well, and if another commissioner would like to join that, that's
Equity,
diversity and inclusion.
Sure, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Okay,
And
that's a good idea.
Can come. We just have to let somebody know to notice it if more than one commissioner wanted to go.
Right, that's a good idea. Very good idea. Yeah,
I
Commissioner.
go occasionally,
Gary Schmidt.
The Association of O&C Counties, we just rejoined that. Would a commissioner like to be the liaison to that?
I will be the liaison to that. They've asked me to join that. I forgot. Thank you.
Chair, there's one more that I see is not on the list that just occurred to me, and that is I'd like to be the liaison for the broadband stuff that we're working on.
Oh, and Paul, I'd like to be with you on that. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, broadband, we'll just call it broadband liaison. That's self-explanatory. Savas and Schrader. Good job.
Right. Yay.
Anything else we can think of? Tracy, you got all that?
I do. I have everything, and I'll make sure staff knows your choices. Thank you so much.
And then when you get this done, can you type this up according to commissioners?
Yeah.
Commissioners, and then, because I function better that way, thank you.
Yes.
And I just want to bring up one point. We received some emails from folks out in the community concerned about, since Commissioner Scholl, there's been requests for him to resign about being appointed as liaison. So, Chair Smith, I just think a response should come from you and what the board has decided.
Well, that's a good point, Commissioner
And that
Fisher.
we're moving forward with the business of the county, and this is what we decided to.
Yes, and Commissioner Scholl will continue with the business of the county with his assigned duties as he partook of today, and he will engage in these activities and any other activities that any other commissioners engage in. I think that is clear enough.
I just think that response should come from the chair and that we have this
Absolutely,
discussion.
absolutely.
So I recommend a motion to affirm all the decisions you made today. If you agree, for the record, just so you
Well,
can
I'll go
solidify.
ahead and make the motion that commissioners, that we affirm these duties that are outlined in here, but it doesn't mean they can't change. Just so that we know this, that they're codified in our committee assignments, and it's helpful to staff. It's also helpful to the community as well. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Okay, I made the motion. Commissioner Scholl seconds that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Christina, would you please call the poll?
Yes. Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye, passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Gary.
Great work, thank you. One last policy session today, Commissioners, that is Moses Lake Industries Enterprise Zone Agreement. This is presented by Business and Community Services Department. We have Cindy Moore and Sarah Ekman from that department to present. They're both on Zoom, so are they in the room? Whoever would like to start, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Administrator Schmidt. Hi, my name is Sarah Ekman. I wanted to say good afternoon, Chair Smith, Commissioners, and Administrator Schmidt. I'm a Deputy Director with Clackamas County Business and Community Services. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. We're here to talk to you about an enterprise zone agreement with Moses Lake Industries. Enterprise zones exempt businesses from local property taxes on new investments for a specified amount of time, which varies among different zone programs. So in exchange for locating or expanding into any enterprise zone, eligible businesses receive total exemption from the property taxes normally assessed on new plant and equipment. Local governments, such as Clackamas County, are responsible for creating, amending, managing, and renewing most of these zones, and this is currently authorized through June of 2025. We have 5 enterprise zones in our county, and Cindy Moore, our Economic Development Coordinator with us here today from our Economic Development Division, is going to walk you through a bit more on the program, as well as the specific details about our agreement with Moses Lake Industries that is before you today for consideration. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Commissioners, and Administrator Schmidt. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Cindy Moore. I'm with your Business and Community Services Department, part of the Economic Development Division. I would also like to take a moment to recognize the representatives from Moses Lake Industries who are in our Zoom audience today, along with our key partners from the Assessment and Taxation Office and County Council as they are available for questions. To begin, I'd like to share with you just a few highlights of the enterprise zone purpose, the criteria, and the difference between the 3- and 5-year options. So as Sarah mentioned, enterprise zones are offered by the state for local jurisdictions to implement. And for this specific purpose today, the North Urban Zone was established originally in 1997 and then was reauthorized again in 2019. So we set them up to support economic and business development across our county. Traded sector businesses can apply for the abatement for the construction of new facilities and improvements to existing facilities and/or new equipment. And with that, I want to also mention that the abatement does not have anything to do with the actual land value. This is to the improvements that are on the property. So new buildings, machinery, or equipment. So currently there are 5 zones in Clackamas County. The one we're talking about today is the North Urban Clackamas County Zone. And that includes Milwaukee, Gladstone, and the unincorporated area of Clackamas County, which is along 224 Highway 212. And then we have Oregon City, Estacada, Molalla, and Sandy. In all of our zones, there is a standard 3-year option, and then there's also an extended 5-year option. So both have the following criteria, and these are the same for both. So you have to increase full-time permanent employment by 10%. The company needs to maintain minimum employment levels during the exemption period. They also enter into what's called a first source hiring agreement with the Oregon Employment Department. And then they pay an application fee of 0.1% of the proposed total investment. And that, in this case, has already been paid by Moses Lake. So with the 5-year criteria, there's 2 additional pieces. The first one speaks to the compensation of new workers, and that compensation must be 150% of the county average wage. And Business Oregon sets the county wages as part of the enterprise zone program. So we're pulling from the 2019 annual average for Clackamas County, and that's at $54,802. And so 150% of that wage is $82,203. For the local approval for the written agreement, this needs to be approved for a 5-year option. And this is with our local zone sponsor, which in this case incorporates Clackamas County, the city of Milwaukee, and the city of Gladstone. So the City of Milwaukee Council approved the Moses Lake Extended Agreement on January 19th, and Gladstone followed on February 9th. So both jurisdictions have approved the written agreement as prepared in partnership with County Council and the Assessment and Taxation Office. I also wanted to give you just a couple highlights on the summary of projects that we've seen in the North Urban Clackamas County zone. So in 2019, we had 4 projects. The companies proposed over $43 million in investment and then created 37 new family wage jobs. In 2020, we had 1 project, and this is specific to the North Urban Zone, for $5 million in proposed investment and an additional 14 new jobs. So let's get to a little bit more specifics on the Moses Lake project. So I also wanted to share with you that this process is part of their full application packet. So we've been working with the company for the last few months to gather all the required documentation, complete the application, and then present this to you in the form of the extended written agreement, which is necessary for their 5-year request. We then package all this information together upon your approval today. All that will be forwarded to the assessor for final approval. So Moses Lake is expanding their operations in Milwaukee and building out a new advanced research center and R&D battery lab. They're a leading supplier of high performance, high purity chemicals to all segments of the semiconductor and flat panel industries. Their proposed investment is just around $1 million, and they plan to add 2 to 3 jobs that then will meet that criteria of 150% of the county average wage. In your packet today, you have the tax analysis, and I just wanted to emphasize that that estimated tax abatement is the county portion of the abatement for the total 5 years, and that estimate is around $14,910. So with that, that concludes my comments for today. Thank you again for your time and consideration. We'll take any questions.
I have one quick question. On page 5 of 6, there's a signatory page. Who signs for Clackamas County?
I believe that would be the chair or as determined.
It'd be
Or county
the chair.
administrator?
You would sign it, Judy.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Savas.
Cindy, I read this a couple times. Are we in year 3 looking at a 2-year extension, or are we looking, what exactly, it's not clear to me, even though I read it twice, and the way you presented, or are we just going for the 2-year extension? Which is it?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Savas. This will be a 5-year total exemption. Nothing has been started yet. This is coming to you as part of the application process.
Okay, so what's approved is the 3-year or the 5-year by the city of Gladstone and Milwaukee?
Sure, so nothing has been formally approved yet, as that happens at the assessor's office. What has been proposed and requested by the company is the 5-year option. And so the written agreement that's part of your packet is what has been approved by the Milwaukee City Council and the Gladstone City Council. And that's the one document that would need approval by the commissioners.
Okay, so the lab they're adding, and that is the commercial equipment that will be assessed at a later date at the full rate after 5 years.
That is correct. And that would then come back on the tax rolls.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be, sorry, just to be clear, that would happen on the 6th year.
Okay, right.
I do think Mr. Savas has a point on page 4, the bold letters. It is confusing to me as well. And Commissioner Fisher is shaking her head. Written agreement with the North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone sponsor to extend property tax exemption for an additional 2 years for a total of 5 consecutive years for investment by Moses Lake. I think that is confusing with what you are saying. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Thank you for saying that. So I guess maybe a different way to explain it would be that a 3-year exemption is a standard exemption. You would not see those come before you. For any 5-year request for that extended 2 years, that's when we bring this written agreement to the board for approval.
So are they getting 2 more years of a tax abatement than they normally would?
They would in this case. That is the request, correct?
Do commissioners have any concerns about that?
Yeah, can I just ask
Yes.
a question? I'm looking at this little chart, Cindy, that's on page, I think it's 2, where it says the investment of how much money in year 1, and then year 2 and year 3, and then the 3-year abatement subtotal, and then it goes on to year 4, year 5, and then the totals.
Yes.
So the numbers, should there be dollar signs in front of all of those numbers? And is it really that they make an almost $300,000 investment, they have $592 that they're saving on their taxes? Is that what this means?
I think it's just zero.
Can you just explain that chart? I guess that's my question.
Certainly.
I'm
So
trying to
the
get
first
us,
part of your
my
question-
question is, what I'm wanting to understand is how much are they investing to get what in return from us?
Sure, I appreciate that question, Commissioner Fisher. So yes, those are dollar amounts. So at the bottom of that chart, you'll see each year, and that's the reflection of the abatement per year, and then a subtotal rolled in for the 3-year standard option, and then what the 5-year would be. So those investment numbers, well, you'll see those 3, we call them buckets, and that's the machinery and equipment or building improvements. And where those numbers, you can see how they roll out, that is based upon the depreciation schedule as determined by the assessor's office. So you have that 296,000 line, the 390 line, and the $300,000 line, and then they roll out based on depreciation. So yes, those are dollar amounts.
Okay, so they basically save, if we go with 5 years, $14,910.
For the county portion, correct.
For the
This is
county
strictly
portion.
just what the county portion would be foregoing.
And is
correct.
that for the whole 5 years, or is that per year for 5 years?
The way the chart reads, you can see how each year breaks down, and then the highlighted section where it says 5-year abatement total, that 14,910 would be the total.
For 5 years.
Correct.
That's what she was asking.
Yeah. So I got that, and then my last question, and then I'll be done. And then how much do they pay in property taxes in comparison to that? You might not know that.
You know, I don't have that exact figure off the top of my head, but I can certainly work with the assessor's office and the company to pull that
I
information.
mean, I'm
for you.
just
do we
curious.
know yet? Do we know?
How proportionality, what's the percentage of what they're saving? That's all. I was just curious.
Thank you for that question. I don't have that detail with me, but I can certainly follow up if that's of interest.
Commissioner Savas has his hand
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so my question is there, I don't know the exact, what the contract looks like with, a particular applicant like this particular company. So I gather that there must be a requirement for them to maintain that existence or investment for, a period of time, 20 years, let's say. I don't know what that is, but that's one of the parts of my question, so that we can actually see the return on investment. The return on investment being property taxes. So if eventually you can maybe answer this question: when do we anticipate seeing a return on that investment? How many years out do we go? And is there assurances that they will be there? And if not, is there a clawback?
So the first part of your question, the tax rolls, the investment would go back on the tax rolls as soon as that portion of the investment is complete. And I know this is going to sound like a kind of a tricky answer, but it also is based upon when the company makes that investment. So say, for example, we approve this, their first claim is next year. That starts the 5-year schedule for that investment. And say maybe that's not the total $1 million of the $1 million, and maybe part of that happens in the second year. That triggers then a 5-year extension or 5-year calendar, if you will, for that particular investment, and then that would come back on the tax roll that 6th year. Does that help answer the first part?
Yeah, the first part, yes.
Yes. And by state statute, we do have clawbacks in place. We certainly want to work with our businesses should there be, a curtailment of employment or some extenuating circumstances. But yes, there is language in the state statute that if something were to completely go sideways and we needed to recapture what that abatement would be, the company would then be responsible for the abatement that they would have received could they have met all the criteria.
Yeah, and the other question you need to answer is, when do you anticipate a return on investment where we actually recover the $14,000 and then actually build upon that? How many years out do you think that will be?
Sir, I don't have that answer for you right now, but I can certainly work offline to try and gather some of those projections. But right. I don't have an answer for you on that right now.
Yeah, there would have to be a calculation of depreciation. I don't know if they actually own the property or if they rent the property, so that might be a factor as well. Thank
Certainly.
you.
Of course.
So, with that in mind, I think I will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
It has been approved, moved that we approve option 1, and then take it to the business meeting. It's been seconded by Commissioner Scholl. Any other comments?
Chair Smith?
Yes, Commissioner Scholl.
I'd like just to say thank you to the people from Moses Lake Industries who are on the call. Thank you for your investment in Clackamas County. We really appreciate it.
That's a good sentiment. Yeah. Very nice. I'm glad they want to invest in our county and provide jobs. I think maybe that's how we will get our money back, by them living in Clackamas County. Maybe those employees will buy a house and we'll get our property taxes back. There you go. Okay, Christina, would you please call the poll?
Yes, Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
And Chair Smith?
Aye, and the motion passes. Thank you very much for this presentation. Gary, do you have anything else?
That is all for today, Commissioners.
And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Commissioners, for your hard work.